In this lesson, we will look at how we can add Cypress end-to-end testing support to a Create React App application. So let's go. To start off, we will run the command npx create react app, passing in the name of the application, here Cypress CRA, and using the TypeScript template. Once the installation is complete, we will cd into that directory and start setting it up for Cypress. The final result of everything that we are about to do will also be available on GitHub. Now, in order to install Cypress for this particular project, we will run npm I to install Cypress. We will install the package Cypress instrument CRA to instrument for code coverage our Create React App application, and the Cypress code coverage package to instrument our tests, so our tests are also covered by code coverage, and then finally the package start server and test, which will be used to start the Create React App application with the instrumentation in place so that it can be tested with code coverage using Cypress. Now, once the installation is complete, we will go ahead and open up this directory within our IDE. Now, the first thing that we need to do is to configure Cypress, and we will do that using a cypress.json file at the root of our project. We set up the base URL to be localhost 3000, which is the address at which Create React App runs our application. I like all my Cypress source code to be under the source Cypress folder, so I specify the integration folder, fixtures folder, support file, and the plugin file all to be within the source Cypress folder. Now, the support file and the plugins file will be used to specify code coverage for our Cypress tests. First up, we create the Cypress support index.js file, and within this file, all that we need to do is import the Cypress code coverage support module. The next file that we need to create is the source Cypress plugins index.js. Now, very similar to the support file, we will require the Cypress code coverage task module to modify the webpack config that is used internally by Create React App, and once we have modified this config, we simply return it from the module. Now, that's all for the Cypress.json configuration. The next thing that we need to do is to configure TypeScript to load the type definitions for Cypress. We can do that by opening up our tsconfig, adding a type section, and within that type section, adding the types for Cypress. This will work because Cypress ships with TypeScript definitions out of the box. Now, one more thing that you might want to do is to ignore all of the artifacts that Cypress generates while running its tests. So we open up our git ignore and ignore Cypress videos, Cypress screenshots, and the code coverage results. Now, a lot of the JavaScript testing frameworks out there have global pollution, so you cannot have both of them within the same project. Jest, which comes baked in with Create React App, and Mocha, which comes baked in with Cypress, both have different definitions for the global expect function. The simplest solution is to only use one of them, and for this project, we will simply remove Jest and use Cypress instead. Now that we've removed app.test.tsx, which came baked in with Create React App, we will create our first Cypress test under Cypress integration app.spec.tsx. Now, for this demonstration, we will create a very basic application test where we simply visit localhost 3000 and then get the anchor that will be displayed on screen that should have the text learn React. Now, in terms of testing, it will be extremely easy. We will create a basic test using it, should work. We use the Cypress command visit to visit localhost 3000 and then use sci.get to get the anchor element and then ensure that it should have the text learn React. Now, the default tsconfig created by Create React App expects every file to be a module. Now, this file is currently not a module because it does not have any root level import or export statements. So we are getting this error that all files must be modules when the isolated modules flag is provided. In order to fix this error, we will simply export a dummy object from the root of this file, and this file will then turn into a module and that error will go away. Now, let's open up package.json to configure how we will be executing our Cypress tests. As we mentioned, we will no longer be using Jest, so I will remove all the dependencies that are related to Jest. We will remove the default test script, which also runs Jest, and replace it with a few scripts that run Cypress, one for development and one for testing on the CI server. We've added a script, Cypress start app, which still runs React scripts, but with the environment variable browser set to none so that React scripts doesn't open up a browser. We also pass in an additional argument, -r Cypress instrument CRA. This ensures that the bundle created by React scripts will have the necessary instrumentation, which will allow for code coverage analysis. Next, we've added a script, Cypress start wait, which uses the start server and test package to execute the command Cypress start app, and then waits for HTTP localhost 3000 to become available, ensuring that our web application is started before we run the tests. Next, we use the Cypress start wait command to create two scripts. One, Cypress open, which will execute Cypress during our development, and then Cypress run, which will execute Cypress on the CI server in headless mode. That's it for the configuration, and now we can start playing around with our application using Cypress. So we already have this test app.spec.tsx. During development, we can open up the terminal and run npm run cypress open. This starts up the application with the instrumentation in place, and then opens up the Cypress test runner. Within the test runner, we can click on this test to execute it within our selected browser, which is Electron in this case. And as you can see, the test passes because of course the application is working fine. You can leave this window open while you are working with the test within your IDE, and whenever you modify the code, this test runner will re-execute the spec file. Once you are done, you can close the Cypress windows and everything will tear down gracefully, returning you back to the terminal. Now the other script that we set up within our package.json was Cypress run, which can be used to execute Cypress in headless mode for the CI server. When we run this command, everything including our web application is run entirely within the terminal. Our application boots up, Cypress runs its tests, and it even does video recording for any of the tests that it runs, and finally exits. You can see that our single test is passing in this case. Throughout this process, Cypress has also been collecting coverage report for our application, and you can view this by opening up coverage alcov report index.html within your browser. With that done, once it opens up, you can see that for the simple test that we wrote, the coverage for our application component app.tsx is at 100%. Of course, if there were any code paths that were triggered by some interaction, we could jump back to our test and add additional interaction commands from Cypress to trigger those particular portions of our code to ensure they function as expected. And that's all for this lesson on setting up a great developer workflow for using Cypress with Create React App. If you enjoyed this lesson, smash that like and subscribe for more content like this, and I will see you in the next one.